It was 1983, an unimaginable crime.
Diane Downs was a case that captured the imagination and the horror of people.
Welcome to Watch Mojo, and today we're looking at 20 of the worst mothers in history.
She looks like she could be a soccer mom, but 25 years ago, this woman committed a crime that shocked the nation.
For this list, we're looking at the most horrible cases of moms committing crimes. What do you make of these stories? Let us know below. Susan Eubanks. On October 26, 1997, 33-year-old Susan Eubanks got into a heated argument with her boyfriend and called her estranged husband with a message. She cryptically told him to say goodbye. When deputies arrived at the house to check on Eubanks, they found that she had attempted to take her own life and kill all 4 of her children. 3 were dead at the scene, and the 4th passed away the following day from his injuries. Eubanks survived and was later convicted of multiple counts of first-degree murder.
Eubanks was going through a divorce, and prosecutors said she killed her children as revenge.
She was placed on death row, and the Supreme Court of California denied her appeal in 2016. As of 2022, she is still awaiting execution. Pearl Fernandez. In 2012, Gabriel Fernandez moved in with his biological mother, Pearl Fernandez, and her partner, Isauro Aguirre. He had lived with both his great-uncle and his grandparents beforehand.
Had he been able, he would have stopped Gabriel's mother, Pearl Fernandez, and her boyfriend, Isauro Aguirre, from taking Gabriel from the grandparents who adored him.
Pearl never showed any type of love towards you.
Unfortunately, the young boy was severely mistreated by his mom and her boyfriend, and this continued for 8 months. On May 22, 2013, the pair beat Gabriel so badly that he stopped breathing, prompting Fernandez to call for help. The boy was found to be brain dead and died after a few days due to a combination of factors, including blunt trauma. Pearl Fernandez was given a life sentence.
It goes without saying that the conduct was horrendous, inhumane, and nothing short of evil.
She won't be eligible for parole. Aguirre was put on death row. Megan Huntsman. The story of Megan Huntsman is a horrifying one, and viewer discretion is certainly advised. Her ex, Darren West, was tidying her garage when he stumbled upon a box. Taking off the lid, he found a young corpse.
The remains were found inside this home in Pleasant Grove, Utah, a small city just north of Provo.
This led to a gruesome truth coming out. For 10 years between 1996 and 2006, Huntsman had killed 6 of her and West's own children and stashed their bodies away. According to Huntsman, she, quote, wanted to help them avoid the terrible life she would have given them.
She told officers, she said specifically, she had to choose between the drugs and the babies, and she chose drugs.
She was apprehended in April of 2014 following the discovery and was later convicted of 6 counts of first-degree felony murder. She will likely serve at least 30 years in prison. Raina Thaiday. As far as unspeakable tragedies go, this is a pretty massive one. In December 2014, Thaiday's 20-year-old son came to see his mother, and he discovered 8 dead children, all of whom she had killed.
The awful scene was discovered by the 20-year-old brother of the victims.
7 of the victims were Thaiday's own, and the 8th was her niece. It's been reported that Thaiday was suffering from severe mental health issues, including undiagnosed schizophrenia. It was also said that she was suffering from a mental health episode at the time of the attack.
I can only imagine the grief that this community is feeling as they come to grips with the events over the last day.
Thaiday was therefore found to have been of a, quote, unsound mind, so the charges were dropped, and she was sent to a mental health hospital for treatment. Jennifer and Sarah Hart. Wives Jennifer and Sarah Hart met at South Dakota's Northern State University, and in 2006, the couple adopted 3 children. 2 years later, they adopted 3 more. Unfortunately, this large family had a long history of abuse.
Investigators soon realized the Harts had been in trouble or scrutinized by Child Protective Services in Minnesota, Oregon, and Washington.
The kids bore evidence of physical violence, and they claimed to have been starved. They were taken out of school, and in one famous incident, one of the boys, named Devonte, was photographed hugging a cop and crying. On March 23, 2018, social services attempted to contact the Harts, as they had been tipped off by the family's neighbors. 3 days later, Jennifer Hart drove their car off a cliff, killing herself, her wife, and all 6 children.
During today's hearing, multiple California investigators all concluded Jennifer Hart intentionally killed her family by driving off the cliff.
Isabel Martinez. This woman from Gwinnett County, Georgia, contacted 911 to report a crime, but it turned out that she was calling on behalf of herself. On July 6, 2017, Martinez attacked her children with a knife inside the family's abode. Her spouse, Martin Romero, attempted to intervene, but ended up losing his life at her hands.
Back on July 6, police said her mother, Isabel Martinez, stabbed and killed her 4 children and husband inside their Gwinnett County home.
She also killed 4 of her 5 children, with the 5th suffering serious injuries in the attack. The following day, Martinez renounced her right to a lawyer and flashed some thumbs-ups in court. She was ultimately sentenced to life in prison.
Prosecutors with the Gwinnett County District Attorney's Office tell me Martinez is now in a state mental health facility where she will receive treatment and evaluations. As she serves her sentence, whether she will ever leave that facility is unknown.
Lanaya Cardwell. Toddler Nevaeh Allen was reported missing from Baton Rouge, Louisiana on September 24, 2021. 2 days later, her body was found in the woods of Hancock County, Mississippi, which is about a 2-hour drive from Baton Rouge.
Nevaeh was reported missing Friday, and her body was found Sunday in Hancock County, Mississippi.
Suspicion fell on Allen's mother, Lanaya Cardwell, and Cardwell's boyfriend, Philip Gardner. They were both arrested on the charge of second-degree murder, although both pleaded not guilty. As of 2022, their fates remain uncertain. Cardwell is accused of assaulting and murdering the deceased, and it's suspected that Gardner drove to Mississippi and disposed of her body in the woods.
Baton Rouge Police Department detectives arrested Lanaya Brittany Cardwell, the mother of Nevaeh, and she was charged with second-degree murder.
China Arnold. A very disturbing incident occurred on August 30th, 2005. Following an intense fight with her boyfriend, China Arnold grabbed her newborn girl and did something horrific involving a cooking device.
You know, the facts in this case are just horrific, and it's an unimaginable type of death.
The child quickly passed away due to severe internal injuries. An investigation was conducted, and Arnold was eventually charged with the death. It took 3 trials to convict her for good, as one ended in a mistrial and the other was tainted by prosecutorial misconduct. But on May 13, 2011, China Arnold was found guilty of aggravated homicide and sentenced to life in prison.
Wilkinson and other family members pleaded with a jury to not allow Judge Mary Wiseman to sentence Arnold to death.
Diane Downs. Diane Fredrickson met Steve Downs in high school, and the two tied the knot in 1973. They had 3 kids together before splitting up. In May 1983, she arrived at an Oregon hospital in a bloody vehicle. Both she and her 3 children had been shot.
According to Elizabeth Diane Downs, she and her 3 children were shot by a strange man.
One kid had passed away, and the others had survived with debilitating injuries. Diane Downs' story was that they had all been viciously attacked by a stranger trying to carjack her. But her behavior raised eyebrows, and an official investigation was launched.
Here was a woman who was completely apathetic about the welfare of her kids. She was just emotionally flat and preoccupied with something else.
9 months later, charges were filed against Downs. She was convicted in 1984, and minus one short-lived escape, has been imprisoned ever since. Andrea Yates. Texas woman Andrea Kennedy was a nurse and married engineer Russell Yates. The two started a family, but she exhibited troubling behavior after the birth of their 4th child. She subsequently received a postpartum psychosis diagnosis, though things devolved following her dad's passing.
They brought her out and she looked like a zombie. There was a sort of wildness in her eyes.
On June 20th, 2001, Andrea Yates filled the bathtub and drowned all 5 of her kids. 4 of them were then laid on the bed, and she called 911 on herself.
She then called 911 to report what she'd done.
You need an ambulance? No, I need a police officer. Yeah, send an ambulance.
She was initially set to spend life in jail, but her conviction was eventually overturned. Instead, she was deemed not guilty due to mental illness and placed in a mental health facility. Ma Barker. When it comes to Depression-era gangsters, it doesn't get much worse than the Barker Karpus gang. Between 1931 and 35, the group was involved in a slew of criminal activity. Co-founder Fred Barker and some of the other members had a famous mother, widely known as Ma Barker, who was killed. Barker was publicly portrayed as a villainous matriarch, and even depicted as the one pulling all the strings behind the curtain.
Was a shy country girl named Ma Barker.
This is thought to be false, but she was still involved in some capacity. Ma Barker was aware of the gang's violent activities, serving as their accomplice and helping to keep them hidden from prying eyes.
She protected her sons. A sweet little woman moved down to Ocklawaha, Florida. They were just going to rent this family's house, to spend her elder years. But actually, that was the site of what is still today the longest FBI shootout in history.
Bianca N., a 22-year-old German woman identified as Bianca N., fed her baby, put her down to sleep, and proceeded to leave for a Halloween party. The child was left home alone while her mother was out for the next 3 days. In that time, she lacked food and water and passed away. Upon returning home and finding her daughter deceased, Bianca N. ran away. The child was then found by social services, and her mother was arrested. According to Bianca N., the death was not premeditated, and she had only meant to be gone for a couple of hours. Regardless, she was convicted of homicide and sentenced to life in prison. Susan Smith. The story of Susan Smith shares some similarities with that of Diane Downs. Like Downs, Smith initially tried passing off her crime as carjacking. Smith publicly pretended that a black man had stolen her vehicle and her 2 boys.
I would like to say to whoever has my children that they please bring them home.
The incident became national news starting in late October of 1994. However, investigators quickly noticed holes in her story, and suspicion fell on Smith herself. 9 days later, on November 3rd, she admitted that she had indeed killed her sons.
After 9 days, though, Susan Smith finally confessed, saying she did it herself.
According to her, she had trapped them inside the car and sent it into South Carolina's John D. Long Lake. Smith avoided the death penalty, but was given a life sentence. Teresa Knorr. The Teresa Knorr case has shocked people for decades. Knorr severely mistreated her 6 children, often subjecting them to physical violence and imprisonment.
Carrie told me that her mother did not like women, and she also did not like her daughters because they were women.
In July 1984, following years of horrific treatment, Knorr killed her daughter Susan. Then, in June of 1985, Knorr killed another of her kids, Sheila, by locking her in a closet. The corpse remained in the hot space for days until the odor overwhelmed the residents and Knorr forced 2 of her boys to get rid of it. Knorr eventually fled to Salt Lake City, and her daughter Terry called America's Most Wanted to report what had transpired.
The prosecution's case is built around Terry's brave statements. But she is spared the trauma of having to come face to face with her mother.
She was ultimately found, arrested, and given 2 life sentences. Marianne Cotton. Marianne Cotton's adult life was filled with death. Her first husband passed away in 1865. Her second followed in 1866. Following this, both her mother and 4th husband also died. Suspiciously, everyone seemed to succumb to stomach ailments.
It seems likely that Marianne was a homicidal maniac.
A whole range of people who she purported to care for ended up dead when it became expedient.
Throughout these years, 11 of her 13 kids died of similar causes. Following her stepson's passing, she was investigated. Authorities soon realized that she had deliberately poisoned the deceased using arsenic. It's now thought that Cotton had murdered all of the aforementioned victims as well. She was executed in March of 1873.
I think she developed into being a serial killer for convenience, for her own convenience, as opposed to enjoying killing.
Claire Biggs. This mother had an infant son named Reese, whom she continuously mistreated. Reese had reportedly suffered many broken bones, including his wrist and shoulder. He had also endured numerous fractured ribs, the result of Biggs's violence. Tragically, he passed away in 2005, and Biggs was sentenced to 8 years in prison. Her significant other, Paul Husband, didn't act to end the mistreatment, and he too was imprisoned. While inside, Biggs was reportedly disliked by her fellow inmates, supposedly owing to the nature of her crime. In May of 2012, she was apparently trapped inside a gardening shed and badly beaten by a group of prisoners. Stacey Marie Parsons. On Monday, July 21, 2014, Stacey Parsons went into her local police department and confessed to murdering her daughter, Victoria Wyatt. It was said that Parsons' husband threatened to leave her, leading her to become violent.
The child's father says the mom was jealous of the little girl.
She reportedly took her child to a bridge, drowned her, then wrapped up her body and went home. When she got back, a friend named Randy Dias checked the trunk of her car, finding a deceased Wyatt.
The police don't know for sure what the motive is here, and it's interesting because you have other people that knew her that said she was a wonderful, loving mother, that she did anything for her child, she was caring, she would never harm her. But then you do have other people that are saying she was a horrible mom.
Though Wyatt's dad and Dias attempted to save her, it was too late. Parsons will spend the rest of her life in prison, as she was denied the possibility of parole. Belle Gunness. Like Marianne Cotton, Belle Gunness was a serial killer who claimed the lives of her children. Gunness murdered a minimum of 14 individuals, although the true number could be in the dozens. She attracted men and would proceed to kill and bury them on her Indiana farm.
She would murder her male victims and then chop them up and bury their remains in her front yard.
She also took the lives of numerous kids, including her own and those of her spouses. When her farm burned down in 1908, investigators unearthed numerous remains, including what were thought to be her and her kids' corpses. Unlike the other mothers on this list, Gunness faced no legal repercussions. Though it's never been validated, many think she faked her death, fleeing into an unknown and undocumented future.
But it's not widely thought now that she was that body. It's now widely thought that she got away and lived out her life, correct?
That was one possibility, really, from the time her atrocities were discovered.
Others say she passed away. Gertrude Baniszewski, often regarded as the most horrific case in Indiana's history, the story of Gertrude Baniszewski is a disturbing one. Baniszewski was a depressed woman with 7 children. 2 of her daughters befriended sisters Sylvia and Jenny Likens at school. The Likens sisters were later sent to live with Baniszewski, and the matriarch embarked on an infamous string of abuse.
Her parents left her in the care of Gertrude Baniszewski. Just a month later, she was dead.
Sylvia was routinely tormented by Baniszewski, who sometimes forced her own children and Jenny to help. This lasted for months before Likens' body gave out and she died. Baniszewski was given a life sentence. 2 of her kids and some neighbors received varying convictions and prison terms. Despite the life sentence, Baniszewski was paroled in 1985 after serving less than 20 years.
Once again, the board voted 3-2 to let Baniszewski go.
The bottom line, you cannot bring someone who is dead and gone back to life. And I wouldn't be a member of this board if I didn't believe people could change.
Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, make sure you go into your settings and switch on notifications. Sanae Shimomura. This Japanese woman had grown sick of taking care of her children, so she abandoned them. On June 9, 2010, Shimomura locked her young kids inside her apartment and went to stay with a friend. Neighbors reportedly heard the little one's cries, but didn't think it was cause for alarm. After 50 days, Shimomura is said to have returned home and found them deceased. She subsequently went out, although she did inform a colleague of her children's deaths. The police were contacted, and Shimomura was arrested. It was revealed that the kids had survived about 20 days, using garbage, condiments, and frost from the fridge to stay alive. Shimomura was found guilty of their deaths and sentenced to 30 years in prison.